Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox. One of the layers we are going to have to navigate as we go through our journey of self-discovery, as we go through the process of rebuilding our identity, reframing, we're going to have to recalibrate. And with that, there's going to be a period where you are going to be doing some things as you rewrite the script, as you get into the deeper truth of who you are and come to that place where you rebuild a sense of reference, self-reference. Once you get to that place that you're discovering, your likes, your dislikes, who you are, your worth, your value, and all those attributes and characteristics that actually define who you are. And sometimes it looks like that you are becoming self-absorbed or self-obsessed because everything is based on, again, a new script, a frame of reference as to who you are and why you're doing the things that you're doing and why you're changing the things or the way you think. So don't get all bent out of shape and worried about what others are going to say or what others are going to think. Of course, it's going to seem, it's going to appear, it's going to look like it's an ego thing, but in reality, it's not. You are self-defining, and that takes recalibration. It takes you being intentional. It takes you being, or you having to pay attention to the choices you make, to the way you respond to things, the questions you ask, the things you allow yourself to be involved in, the things you avoid, the boundaries you set, the standards you change and recalibrate. And it's a sweet spot, but sometimes it can be uncomfortable because it's a reference that's going to take you away from psychological safety. Safety of being accepted, safety of being affirmed, approved, to fit in. Once you start saying no, or no, I'm going to pass, or that's not for me, or no, I'm not ready for that. Once you start developing your nose and creating a new script of you, once you have the understanding of who you are, that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And but you have to know that it's not an ego thing. It's not, you being self-absorbed or, self-obsessed. It's simply that you are paying attention to the person of self. And you have to be comfortable with that. You have to be comfortable with that because you are rewriting a script. Remember, it took years. Today I was talking to a business person, Robin, and it was interesting because we were talking about creating a signature. I was talking to her. I was making a purchase, and I was talking to her about creating a signature for something, and she was giving me a review of the items that I chose and so forth. And she said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm an identity architect." She said, "Wow." She said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, I help people rebuild themselves and get back to their authentic selves so that they can live their lives free and happy and unapologetically." She says, "Wow." She said, "That is fantastic." She says, I bet you help a whole lot of people." I said, "Well, yes." I said, people that really want to go through the rest of their lives being who they are and really gaining the advantage, because I'm telling you, there is great advantage once you get to know who you are. She was like mesmerized. She says, "Oh my goodness." She says, "I am so glad that we met." This was a phone conversation. She said, I'm so glad that we met because I know a lot of people that so and so. Anyway, she was really fascinated with this whole idea. I said, yeah. And then she paused for a second and started thinking. She said, you know what? She said, yes, we go through life trying to be who we're not, trying to imitate other, somebody that we're not, trying to be who we are not. And that's why so many people are frustrated. I said, yes, hence anxiety and depression and so forth. So we had this little dialogue, but what fascinated me is that she was able to identify, like, immediately what it was all about and make reference to her understanding when she said, yeah, we go through life trying to be someone that we're not. And that is like, but we don't pay attention to that until it's brought to our attention. The reason this is so important, because there are advantages when you know who you are, and once you are walking in your true identity, there are a mirage of doors that opens for you. I mean, my husband and I, we had an experience over the weekend, and we had to do some business. So uh, we walk into a place, and whenever you're going to go into some place where you have to negotiate, um, whoever place it is, if it's your office, it gives you an advantage. If it's the organization's office, they have the advantage. And we knew we had certain advantages because of reference and background and all of that, credibility and so forth. And but in my mind, all I could think of, I was trying to figure out some leverage, like what kind of leverage can we use and so forth. When you're dealing with big corporations, sometimes they're the ones that have greater advantage over you because you need what they have. They need you too, but anyway, you know how that goes. So all I could think of is I know who I am, and I all I could think of was that we deserve this. We deserve this. Why? By virtue of just who we are, because we want it, we desire it, and we deserve it. And even though that may seem a little pompous, whatever, but it's true. That was the truth. We deserved it. So we were trying to, we went in with confidence and, had a little conversation and so forth. But in my mind, I thought, okay, we're going to not just get there, but we're going to bring presence. We are going to bring our presence, our identity. This is who we are. And they're going to like it. That's all I could think of. That's all I had. I said, we're going to show up there with our true essence. This is who we are, and here we are, and this is what we offer, and so forth. And this is what we want, and, because it was already determined in our minds uh, what things we wanted and so forth. And so we get there, and the moment we walked in, the reception desk, they looked at us and they were just so polite, and it was just really mesmerizing. And so we gave our intro, Mr. and Mrs. Linox, and blah blah and so forth. And so um, they said, "Great, if you'll have a seat in the reception area, uh, we'll get someone to chat with you and so forth." So this person comes out, and it was a she, and she says, "Wow," she said, "I got a call that there is uh, an amazing couple out here, business people, they're here to see you and blah blah whatever." And she told us that, and because that's the information, the person at the front desk, there were two people there, and they were equally just chatting uh, with us, and just really very pleasant. So we spent some time with that person, negotiating back and forth. We presented our situation, we presented our offer, and they, you know, showed what they could offer and so forth. And but we didn't want to part there. We didn't want to stay in their establishment because we understand how uh, negotiation strategy. We understand how it happens. So we said, look, we have another appointment, so we're going to leave, and we can continue this conversation uh, throughout the week and so forth, and you can get back with us. But this is what we are proposing, and it's we didn't say non-negotiable, but we were so firm that they understood it. They understood it. So we came home, and actually, we went and we celebrated, my husband and I, because for us that was a win, simply because we were so aligned, not only with each other but with the situation, and it turned out well. So anyway, we're home and we're doing just fine. We get a phone call, and they have some information to share and so forth, and uh, it didn't quite match up with our demand, with our proposal. It didn't match up. And so we said, the thing about it though, once you know who you are, that's good. But we knew what we wanted. But at the same time, we were willing to walk away from doing business with them. We were willing to walk away. We had that in our mind. But in my mind, I knew that was not the response. That was not something that we would have had to do, because I was so, talk about alignment. My friend, I'm telling you, this whole thing about knowing your identity and going back to that place of authentic you, it is crucial, because the universe opens doors for you. And when and you can, people talk about manifesting. I don't even use that term, simply because I don't manifest things. I just make it happen. It has to happen. Once it aligns with my nervous system, once it aligns with my mindset, my feeling, my emotion, my thoughts, it has to happen. And I've had that experience, many times before. So I know what that's like. So I said no. I said, go back to our initial uh, demand. I didn't say demand, proposal. And that's what we're going to work with. And they said, okay, well, let me go back and see what else we can do. So my husband and I, we said, you know again, we were prepared to walk away if that was necessary, but I knew that we would not have had to do that. Few days passed, well, not a couple days passed, and then we get a call, and it was just simple. And I said hi, blah blah, whatever, and then they said, we're going to honor your terms. We're good. Well, she says, well, I'm only calling you because I have good news. And I'm like, great, that's super. Let me hear it. And she said, we are going to honor your terms, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And but we were at home, and this happened over the phone, and it puts you in a better place to bargain, to well, not to bargain, to negotiate, because there was no bargaining, but just to negotiate. It puts you in a better place because you are in your domain, and you already had a face to face. They know you, you know them, and they have seen your posture. They have seen what you look like, and they know your presence. They know you. They have seen you, and they saw the truth of who you are. Why? Because that's the way you showed up. And they said, we're gonna honor that, and if you can, let's make an appointment to come in and sign off on it and so forth, and we're good. And I said, okay. I was like cool, calm, collected. I'm the one that got the call because she had my phone number, and my husband was there, and we just every time you get a win in life, regardless of what it is, it what happens is that not only does it reinforces the things that you share, and who you are, and the knowledge that you have, and all of that, but when you see it work, my friend, when you see it work, because I always say it doesn't matter what you believe, it has to work. If it doesn't work, then it's believing something that doesn't work doesn't what does it gives you? It has to work. And in this situation, it's not like I had a belief that this is going to happen. I just knew it, because you know what? I was in my mind, it was already established. It was already established. And I knew, even though we were prepared to walk away, I knew that we would have been doing business with them, that organization. I knew that. I knew that. So it all worked out, and it was just it's but we celebrate the big wins and we celebrate the small wins. The point is, when I see what I share with you, when I see it work, it really excites me. When I see it working in my own life, it reinforces what I share with you. And again, you don't have to do it the way I do it. I'm just saying, there is that person of you, my friend. There is that person of you, which is your true, authentic identity. There is power within that understanding, that knowing. There is power to navigate through life and calibrate and align with the things that you want, you wish, you desire, barring the obstacles and the distractions and all the things, the challenges that you may face. You defy all of that once you decide and you determine what you want and that you're going to have it. In our travels, we had this experience. I was thinking about that the other day. In all of our travels, we went to one of our travels to Costa Rica. I was asked to speak to a group of graduates. They were, 25-ish. Some of them recently graduated, some of them already working in their career. There were nurses, doctors, engineers, architects, attorneys, business people, CPAs. And this was to Costa Rica. And, Costa Rica was classified as a third world country, but in essence, it really isn't, because they are very progressive, and they invest a lot in their citizens. When you are finished with high school, you're not done. People that are finished with high school, they automatically go on to college to get a career. At least that's the way it's been. Of course, things have changed today, because that educational system doesn't work today. Today, it's a whole different dynamics, with AI. and a lot of digital and IT dynamics that are going on. So it's a little different, but people or the kids, not the kids, the adults, once they finish with high school, they go on to higher preparation, either higher education or higher preparation in whatever discipline there is. So it in essence, it's not a third world country, but see, back in the 1950s, any country that did not line up with that were not part of the NATO alliances were considered uh, third world countries. But Costa Rica is a developing country. They are, we've got Chang. He is one of the astronauts here in America. I think he's retired now or he went back. I'm not sure, but he's from Costa Rica. So Costa Rica produced a lot of professionals that are all over the place. They come abroad or so, a lot of it. So, but they have been stereotyped as a third world country. That's how they know themselves, but in essence, they're not. So I was invited to speak to this group of young adults, and so when I got started, I had my intro and so forth, and I said, "How many of you took the bus to come here?" And so it was really interesting because they looked at each other like, the bus, like like who takes the bus, amongst them. And I said, raise your hands, whoever took the bus to come here. Nobody raised their hand. And I said, okay. I said, well, and how many of you have a cell phone? How many of you have a smartphone? Not a cell phone, but a smartphone. And everybody raised their smartphone. And I asked some other questions and so forth. And I said, but yet I asked them if Costa Rica was a third world country. And they said yes. I said, why is that? So I asked them to define what a third world country is. And they know that they're well advanced when it comes to education, because Costa Rica, they invest a lot in the education of their youth, citizens. And they define it. And I said, yet you function with a third world mentality, but you are functioning with the advancement, the improvement, the progress, the electronics, the successes of developing countries. So I went over and I tried to show them how they have been conditioned and programmed with a belief system that doesn't really apply to them, and how they can get out of that mindset. So anyway, after about 45 minutes of speaking, I was saying hello and to everyone and so forth. And this guy, Luigi, we're going to call him Luigi. Luigi is a CPA for one of the top 8, the big 8 CPA firms, and held a top position and so forth. But he had big dreams. He didn't know how to unpack his dreams. And so he approached me and he said, can you do you mind giving me your contact? And he was bold because he didn't even go to the host. He came to me directly and he said, do you mind if I can have your contact, email and phone number, so that I can ask you a question afterwards and so forth. So by the time we got back to the US, I get a call from Luigi, and Luigi shared that Luigi said that he wanted to learn English. He wanted to learn English, and he wanted really to come to the US to learn English so that he could be bilingual and become a better asset to the organization. I think he could have been thinking in terms of establishing his own CPA firm, accounting firm. I'm not sure. The point is, he wanted to learn English. He wanted to be bilingual. He spoke a little bit of English, but he wanted to master the language. And he asked if there were any schools, any advanced school that teaches English in the city that we live. And I checked and so forth, and gave him some information. But of course, we made it clear because we weren't, you know, we weren't set up for him to come and be with us and so forth. That was not. And I said, but you're gonna have to, find your housing and so forth. You're gonna have to work that out. He said, no problem. Luigi, and this is so fascinating every time I think of it. Luigi, you know what he did? He said, no problem. And I said, we will help you get to the US once you get it established where you're going to stay and your plan. You create the plan that you want, create the plan that you are going to work so that you can go to whatever school, whatever. I put the responsibility on him. You're the one that wants this. So you're going to do the research, you're going to do everything, and the external, the super, the the things that are, well, minimal, getting here and transportation, all of that. I said, whatever we can help you with, we will do that. He calls me back 2 weeks later and he said, well, he said, I contacted this person in I think it's Lansing, Michigan, and there's a great school there that teaches English and so forth, and she extended an invitation. Now, remember, this guy, Luigi is in Costa Rica, capital of Costa Rica, knows nothing about the US. He's never been to the US. This didn't even know us, but he knew the people that organized the conference and so forth. So that was okay. But he didn't know he had never been to the US. And so he called and he said, and I would like to travel or get there like in about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. He said, I need to give my employer notice and I need to sell my car. Luigi gave his employer, like, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks notice, and that was fine. And then he had a vehicle. He sold his vehicle. We helped him with his plane ticket, and we said, because his flight connected through our city before it went on to Lansing, Michigan. And he said, we said, why don't you come? Well, you're connecting here. You're welcome to stay a week with us and kind of learn a little bit about, this city and do some fun things before you go on to Lansing, Michigan. He thought that was a great idea. He was very grateful and so forth. So he shows up 3 weeks later, 3 or 4 weeks later, and stayed with us about a week. Such a delightful young man. I mean, delightful, well-educated, great etiquette, just delightful, scrupulous everywhere. And, we were able to take him out, and, we had some family members about his in his season. And they did things together. They went out, they had fun over the weekend. And so then at the end of the week, he got on a plane and went on to Lansing. Now he went to stay with this young lady that lived with her parents. Her parents were away in Europe, and she was at the house herself. And so the young lady arranged for him to come and stay there. Imagine that. He did not even know this person. So he gets to Lansing and he's there. He registered in the school and he's going to school. The parents come back from Europe. They were on a long vacation in Europe. The girl's parents come back from Europe and said, absolutely not. No, you can't stay here. You cannot stay here. But Luigi, first of all, his essence, he and back then, I this whole dialogue about identity and all of that was not part of what I was just, but I always talk about knowing who you are, what you want, where all of that. And I shared part of that in my um, teaching to them and to the group. So the parents came back and they said, no, that's not going to work. So he had to find someplace else. So he and the daughter, I guess she was probably just one single daughter, they became very good friends. She knew another couple that had a 10-year-old son, and talked to them, and they said sure. Once they met him, because the guy was such a delightful soul. He was just pleasant, and just a pleasant human being. You met him, and immediately you kind of liked him. So he the couple said yes, and they had a big house. It's amazing how the universe sets things up for you. They had this big house. They gave him a room facing the creek, facing a creek. As a matter of fact, I remember he sent us pictures. He said, "This is my room," and he became well, not friends with the 10-year-old, but the 10-year-old became attached to him because he was so good to him, and he taught him soccer, and they played football and so forth. And this couple, they travel a lot. And what happened is that during the spring break and every opportunity they got, they traveled. And I remember they were going to Disney World, taking the 10-year-old to Disney World, and they took him. They took Luigi with him. And then another time they were going, I forgot where it was, but wherever they went, they took him. They took him. Now, Luigi was very resourceful. He wasn't just sitting around going to school. Obviously, he came with some resources because he was able to register in the school. Being a foreigner, he had to pay for his classes and so forth at the university where he learned, where he was learning English. Interestingly enough, this happens. So now Luigi had a girlfriend back in Costa Rica, a woman or a girl he absolutely adored. He adored her. And once he showed me her picture, she was just absolutely beautiful. And once he was there for at least, it was almost, about a year. And he was there, and he wanted her to come. I believe his plans were, it's not that I believe, he told me his plans were, she comes, and he really wanted to marry her. I mean, if the relationship continued the way it was when they were in Costa Rica, then that was his plan. And he would talk to her and talk to her and talk to her, and she would hesitate and vacillate, and she's afraid, and this, that, the other. So one day he called me and he said, "Do you mind doing a three-way conversation with Lisette, his girlfriend?" And I said no. Once I realized what the motivation was, what he needed from me, then I said no, absolutely, because I remember having met her as well. She was part of that little conference that I did where I spoke, and I remembered her very well. And I said, absolutely not. I said, I don't mind at all. So we were in a three-way conversation, and when I spoke with Lisette, it was amazing. The fear in her mouth, her words, her voice, it was so palpable. And it wasn't that she was just afraid. She was afraid to leave. She was afraid to get here. She was afraid of what would happen. She was afraid of what if that, what if this, what if that. And she was just, and he was trying to to convince her, to say to her, look, I'm here. I'm here, and I will not allow anything, to happen to you. And he told her his plan and so forth. She didn't want to leave her family. She didn't want to leave the comfort of what she was used to. She didn't want to leave her comfort zone. She didn't want to leave her job. She didn't want anything. And Luigi was so progressive because he knew what he wanted. And the more, every time he decides something, it's like the universe just opened doors for him. It's just like when he went to Michigan, and the parents of his well, not his friend, the person that he met, and he met over social media back then. Yeah, social media. He met this person over social media. Imagine that. And this person said, "Oh yeah, you can come, you can stay at my house. My parents are in Europe, and." He, he was so naive, innocent, that he didn't think anything of it. And he went there. And they had Zoom a few times, so they really got to know each other and so forth. And the girl just wanted to help him. The girl just wanted to help Luigi. And I'm not sure whether or not she had mentioned it to her parents, but he came. She gave him a room, and he was there, and he registered at the university, and he was going to school and whatever. And then when they came back, they said, "No, that's not going to happen." And so he had to leave. But at the same time, she got him a place with another couple who said, "Oh yeah, that's fine," because they saw, for some reason, he just carried presence with him, and he was just right in alignment with them, and he had a good life with them. So anyway, Lisette decided that she was not going to come, going to join him. And what he did after a while, he called and he said, "You know what? It's simply not going to work." What happened? He had to move on. He made a decision. He had to move on. Why? Because first of all, he knew what he wanted. He knew the direction where he was headed. Obviously, while there in Lansing, Michigan, he developed bigger plans. He saw how life was in the US, and he thought, wow, this is, and he developed a bigger dream. He wanted to make her part of his dream, and so that they could set up life together and so forth. But she was so afraid. She didn't want to leave the comfort of what she knew. And she was also professional. I'm not sure what she was. I think she was probably an engineer or architect, something along those lines. But the thing is that they were all educated. But Lisette was afraid. So he said to me, you know, he just didn't see how, because he didn't plan to go back to Costa Rica. Not until he mastered English, and again, he developed other goals, dreams, desires, and so forth. So he stayed there and he worked. He picked up some odd jobs and did things. As a matter of fact, one time he sent us I think it was a picture. Something said that he was now installing roof, roof. He got a job with this organization, with this company, installing roof just to make money, because, I guess he ran out of money, and he was resourceful and he got a job installing roof and so forth. He did that for a short time. While he was in the university at Lansing, Michigan, he met this young lady, and she was from another country. She was also not an exchange student, but she was a foreign student and learning English. And they met, they got close, and they started dating. Back in her country, her parents owned this huge corporation, and they continued to date. They got engaged. They got once they were finished the course, they went back to her country. He went with her, and they planned a wedding, and they got married. Now I think they have 2 kids. The point is this: Luigi had no idea where his path was leading him. All he knew is that this whole thought, as a matter of fact, all this thought about being in a third world country, that he did not even factor that in. He did not even, all that was before his sight was um, himself and where he wanted to go. He became self obsessed. And he would not betray himself by going back to meet up with his former girlfriend. He said, no, 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 no. He stayed true to himself because by then he already had matured and developed and grown and progressed. And, because he had to do things to grow, to make money. Uh, he had great social intelligence. He got along well with the people that he lived with and with everyone. And he was just welcomed by everyone. Things worked out for him. And he took advantage of that. And then he went back with his fiance because I think I'm not sure they got engaged, but the point is they got engaged, they got married, and I believe he is now one of the top executive at the company that is owned by his wife's family. What was it about Luigi? What was it about Luigi? Luigi did not come to play. Luigi was determined. Luigi didn't care anything about what they called his country a third world country. He didn't care anything about that. All he knew was that he had a plan, and it started out. I don't even know that he had the full spectrum of where he was going or what he wanted. It started out with him. He wanted to learn to speak English. That's how it started out. And then with time, he started gaining ideas. He's like, you know what? I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. I want to do that. And remember, he took a leave of absence from his employer, which means that you're gonna go back. Your plan is to go back as a bilingual, so that you can manage the accounts, American accounts, and both, English speaking people and Latinos. But when he came here, he grew exponentially. He grew. His mind, his ambition, his thoughts, he recalibrated, and he's like, wait a minute, I can do this. As a matter of fact, I don't even know that he thought of, identity or steps or whatever. He just held on to his dreams, to his goals, to what he wanted. I don't even know that he called them dreams or goals. All I know is that he created the life that he wanted. And now he's happily ever after. He's got his beautiful wife, and this wife is absolutely gorgeous as well. Luigi is a handsome man. And he's got a beautiful wife, 2 kids, happy. And he had to let go of the past. He had to let go of that past. He had to drop it. He had to let go of it if he wanted to go further. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes in our lives, in order to really come into the place of, and it's really interesting when you see him, because now when you see him, he's just, he's not the version of Luigi that we knew years ago. Is not the version that you see now. You could see it in his whole posture when he's with his family, and you see it on social media. You could see it. That version that we knew, that we met, that version is no longer Luigi at all. We would not recognize this. I mean, of course, he remembers uh, this season, the season he spent with us, but that's a memory. And I share that to say this, my friend. Luigi did not care what people think, what they said. He did not, he just took a chance. Luigi bet on himself. He wanted it so much. It became part of him. He became self-obsessed. He became self-obsessed. And he did not betray himself, the things that he wanted, the things that he desired, the thing that he aspired, the life that he wanted to live. He didn't care anything about third world. He didn't care anything about that. He just knew the type of life, the kind of life he wanted for himself. That's what he knew. Once he understood. And I guess, when you are leveling up, or when you're going through these different phases and these different seasons, and you're living up and you see things happening, what happens? You get bolder. You become bold and commanding, and because you no longer have to believe or hope or no, you know that you can do it. And you start trusting yourself. You start trusting your intuition. You learn to communicate and to deliver the things that are within you. Totally transform. All of us have that chip in us. But sometimes we overthink, and we hesitate, we procrastinate. And that voice that tells us or says, like, what if, sometimes takes dominance over the voice of possibilities. And that's where you decide which one you are going to listen to. That's where you decide which one you're going to heed. That's where you decide, what is it that you really want now in life? What is it? What kind of life do you want? What are the things that you want? I shared last week that, you don't have to. And sometimes, is it okay? Do you want to travel? And, when I say travel, you don't have to go to Europe. You don't have to go to Latin America. You don't have to go to the Middle East, Africa. No, no, no. If you want, if your desire is to go to every state within the US, then you can do that. Don't worry about the money. Start planning. Start planning. And you have to be ready to make moves as the universe opens it. But what I have learned, and I've shared this with you before, is once you make a decision, once you decide, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I want, this is what, my goals are, my dreams, this is what I want. And after a while, it becomes so much a part of you. You start feeling it. You start, in your emotions, in your thoughts, in your feeling, it becomes a part of you. I know what that feels like. As a matter of fact, I had an experience like that years ago, when I was, I started out in New York City, then I lived in California, over there by Pacific 101, over there by Newport Beach. Loved it, close to the water and so forth. And then I went to Oklahoma. Don't ask me why I went to Oklahoma. At that time, I was religious, and I thought I would go to Bible school and so forth. They had a big old Bible school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I went there. Didn't go to Bible school, but anyway, that was the plan. I was there for about a month. I'm sorry, I was there for about a year. And after a while, after I realized that I wasn't going to go to Bible school, I needed to be out because I am a person of big cities. I like big cities, where I can go into the suburb. I always live in the suburb, but I like to be able to go into a big city and, enjoy the city lights and all of that. That's kind of the things that I like. Have fun and enjoy and dinners and entertainment. I like all of that. But then I can retreat back to my nice suburb and, peace and quiet and things like that. And so I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I decided I wanted out. I needed to get out. So my options were either go back to New York or find someplace else to go. And it's interesting when you when you have that kind of a mindset. And and then I decided I would come to Dallas. And it's interesting because I didn't know anything about Dallas at all. All I knew that it was a progressive city, you know, forward moving city, which is right up my alley. And so what I did, once I made a decision, I'm going to Dallas. I didn't know anything at all. I didn't know anyone. So, I had to come here. Well, before I came to Dallas, you have to have a job. So back then, we had the yellow pages. It wasn't as progressive as it is now. So I looked in the yellow pages and I found a recruiting firm. And I contacted the recruiting firm and gave my credentials, my resume and so forth. And the CEO, was owned by a female. Uh, she called me and to interview me. I said, well, I'm in Oklahoma and I'm planning to come to Dallas. And she's like, how soon are you coming? And, all the questions pertinent to my resume. And she says, what part of town, what part of the city are you going to live? This way I can try to get you as close as possible based on the openings that I have. It was a recruiting firm. A recruiting firm, you know what that is. And I said, well, I'm not familiar with the city. I'll get a job first. And based on where I'm working, that's where I will live. In the meantime, once I get the job, then I will, I can come. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, you can set up for a couple of months in a hotel or something, kind of a hotel, while you go to work. And at the same time, you work and then until you find a place of your own. And I'm talking to the CEO on the phone, and she said, well, you don't know where you're gonna live? I said, not yet. I said, I want to get a job first. And based on where the job is, then I will get, I'll stay in a hotel, whatever, a month, couple of months, whatever. You know what she said to me? She said, oh, well, you can stay at my house. I said, what? Mind you, back then there was no such thing like Facebook. So I can I couldn't get on Facebook to see what this person looked like or vice versa. And I paused for a second and I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, you can stay at my house." She said, "I have a big condo and I have an extra room and I'm there alone and you're welcome to stay at my house." Imagine that. That's what she said. And I said, okay, okay. So she started looking for jobs for me. For some reason, she looked at my resume and she thought, wow, this is a good candidate. I could place you, quickly and so forth. But I hadn't gotten a job yet. And but I said, okay, I will plan on coming in a couple weeks. So I got rid of everything that I had, and with 2 suitcases, I came from Oklahoma to Dallas. So I got a plane ticket. Remember, I don't know what she looks like, and she doesn't know what I look like. I get off the airplane and I have my carry-on, and she is standing at a place over there. We looked at each other and I said, you must be Sharon. And she said, and you must be Cynthia. And we just ran and we hugged each other as if we knew each other for years. And she's like, oh, you're so delightful. And oh, it's just good to meet you. And yes, we're gonna get busy to find you a good job and blah blah blah. And she just went on and on, and we became good friends. And she took me to her house. She said, this is your room. And she just pointed out the things that I needed to know and so forth. And the next day she was looking for a job for me. And in no time I did find employment. And after a while I was able to move out and get my own place and so forth. There were some rough times that because that whole transition from one city to another, you have to go through some adjustments. And I did. But it was just crazy, because just imagine someone saying to you, well, you could stay at my house. She didn't even know who I was. She didn't even know who I was. But I guess based on my resume, she used her intuition, and she thought, well, that she'll be okay. And because she lived by herself, big condo, had an extra room, and she just worked it out for me. That was years ago, before I met my husband, obviously. And it worked out. And even back then, I knew one of the things that I knew that I wanted to leave Oklahoma. Oklahoma was too small for me, for the dreams that I had, and I met my husband here in Dallas. And, but Oklahoma was just too small. It was just too small for me, for the things that I wanted. And I knew that I had to leave. I knew so strongly that I wanted out. I didn't want to stay in a small uh, city, Tulsa. And there's nothing wrong with Tulsa. Tulsa's a nice city, but that's just, I wanted big and lights and, a hub where I could fly out and go here and go there. And the main hub, the airlines was here. American Airlines was here. And, when you're in Dallas, you can go nonstop to any place. You can go to Europe, you can go to Latin America, and a lot of nonstop flights and things like that. So I wanted a big city. And I made a decision. And the moment I made a decision, doors start opening, things start happening. I became self-absorbed, self-obsessed. I wanted this. And again, it wasn't ego. It's not ego, my friend, but it's just that you want it so strongly. You know that it has to happen. And when the universe gets that kind of calibration from you, that kind of frequency from you, I mentioned this many times, it has no option but to deliver, and it will deliver whatever it is you desire, whatever it is you need, whatever it is you want. Once you, again, don't, it's for you, not to do anyone harm or anything like that. Whatever it is that you want, the growth, the development, the whatever it is, the universe will deliver. It will deliver. But you must know. When I decided I have to leave uh, Tulsa, Oklahoma, I made a decision that I had to leave, but I didn't know where I was going to go. But then once I decided where I wanted to go, that's when doors opened. The same with Luigi. When Luigi decided he wanted to come to the US to learn English, once he decided and he started looking, he knew that Dallas was not an option, and he just found this person in Lansing, Michigan. Imagine that. I don't even know where that is. And he went there. That's why it's so important for you to know who you are, because when you know who you are, your gift, your power, your strength, you know things about you, and you make it work for yourself. My friend, I'm going to leave you with that so that you can sup on that. If you only knew the powerful abilities that you have, the ability to create. You are a magnificent creative being. And that's not just, I just shared a few things about myself and about Luigi, but whatever it is for you, whether it's your relationship, your marriage, your kids, your health, whatever it is, make a decision and the universe will deliver for you. Every Thursday, right here, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, we have a meeting. And if you can't join me at 2 p.m., then you see these icons over here: YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. You can pick up the show 24/7. And you can pick up the show 24/7 and be encouraged by it. In the meantime, if you wish to drop me a note, go to info@thecynthialinoxshow.com and you can drop me a note and I will respond or create whatever subject matter to share with you next week. You also know that I'm a life coach, an identity architect, and everyone needs to remember, go back to who you are so that your life can flourish in abundance, so you can feast on the good things of life. My friend, have a fantastic weekend. I will chat with you again next Thursday, same time, same place. But whatever you do, make it significant and be intentional. Ciao. Próxima